is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 630. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, you still got your family in town, or have they
No, they've dispersed. They luckily got back to California without incident. I know, there's a lot of people who are flying these days. Huey had his flight delayed. Cheon had his flight delayed multiple days sometimes, but they were able to get back, and it was a great trip.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. We're on that kind of wind down now. I mean, there's still the New Year's coming up and stuff, but we're in that kind of in between zone on the holidays here now. And, we're going to reflect that on the show. We're going to do some story time with Luis. I've got a whole bunch of questions to kind of walk through Luis's career and some of the stories that really stood out to him over the years. And it's going to be a really fun kind of laid back episode of LR here. And we hope you enjoy it. Before we get into that, we want to mention our sponsor, channelfireball.com. Make sure you check them out for really anything you need Magic related. They're a marketplace now. And that means that when you go to search for singles, instead of seeing the inventory of just one store, even if it was a big store like CFB, now you get to see the inventory of all the stores that take place in the marketplace. So that means, on average, you're going to have more choices. You're going to have a different range of conditions and prices of cards that you get to shop from and choose from, but you get that same Channel Fireball customer experience that you're used to. So it's kind of the best of both worlds for you as the purchaser. And of course, while you're there, they support other games too. Pokemon, Flesh and Blood. You can find stuff there if you're into those games, and a whole host of supplies and sealed product and things like that over at Channel Fireball. There's also CFB Pro. Make sure you check that out if you're looking to up your game going into the new year and you want to, kind of level up, right? This is a chance where you get to, read into the minds of some of the great players in our game, and they will break down things in great detail for you in both limited side of things since you're here, but also if you play constructed, you need some deck guides, for a tournament. A lot of times these days you play limited, you qualify for a tournament, and then it ends up being constructed, and you're like, well, crap, I got to get some deck together. Hey, you find a deck guide on CFB Pro, and you're going to be up to speed about as quickly as you possibly can, and it's a great way to make up ground and get information from a trusted source. If you do end up picking up anything over at CFB, if you use the affiliate code LR at checkout, I do appreciate it. It lets them know that we sent you over there, and it helps out the show. So thanks for that. The show's also brought to you by FTX. That's a place to manage all of your digital assets. That's a new territory for most people. Digital assets sounds kind of weird. It's like, well, why does it matter if it's digital? But hey, we're all Magic players. We have cards on Magic Online or on Arena, and we kind of understand what it means to own something digitally. And, that's part of what this whole blockchain technology is trying to bring to the masses, basically, is the ability to officially own something digital. And that's, again, just one of the many things going on over at FTX are things like NFTs and cryptocurrencies, but there's also DeFi, if you've ever heard of that, decentralized finance, and a whole bunch else going on over there. If you want to check it out, it's ftx.us for US-based customers and ftx.com for everybody else. And I will remind you that, you really should consult a investment professional before doing investing of any kind, because it can be risky, and you really need to understand what you're getting yourself into before you put any hard-earned money into it. But when you're ready to do so, ftx.com outside the US and ftx.us inside. Of course, the show is also brought to you by you via the Patreon. If you want to sign up for the Patreon, you get a thank you card and a sticker in the mail, no matter what level you sign up for. That was something that we just wanted to be able to give to everybody who decided to come on board and support us. And then while you're there, you get access to the Patreon feed, which is where we ask our questions for our Patreon question of the week and our Q&A episodes. And when we have guests, a lot of times I'll put in there to see what people want to hear from the guest. And again, that's open to everybody who's a patron. And then as you go up the levels, you can get access to some other stuff like uncut versions of the show and things like that. So thanks to everybody who supports us on Patreon. Really do appreciate it. The link is in the show notes for that if you're interested. Luis, let's not do crack a pack. I just want to jump right into this here. So I want to take our listeners and you and me, I guess, on kind of walk down memory lane with you about your career, your life with Magic. But I want to do it in a way where we get to leverage your storytelling ability, because you know how to tell a funny story, and you've got a lot of them. And so instead of just having you answer questions, right, I wanted you to think of any stories or something that might come to mind about big career milestones or things that happened in your life as we go through. And I've got kind of a list of them here. So I'm going to put you on the spot. I know you're good at this though. And we'll get some stories for you. So let's start early here. When you first started playing Magic, I saw that you posted on Twitter a video of you. What are you, 11 years old in that video?
Yeah, that video, I believe, is in the end of 94. And I was 11 at that point, and I had just picked up Magic a couple months earlier.
Yeah. And, you're running out like lightning bolts and Llanowar elves and Scrib sprites and what was it? Goblin
digging team and Goblin rock sled team.
Yeah. So Luis is running the classic Channel Fireball colors there early, but missing a few of the key ingredients for the combo. But at any rate, you said that was right after you first started. What memories do you have of when you first started playing?
I've got a couple. One is opening that first starter deck of Revised. I bought a starter deck of Revised as like kind of my first purchase, and looking at the cards and just being transfixed by how cool they were. I didn't even know how to play at this point. I just opened and it's just like SoulNet. I opened a Wrath of God, and it's just like, this is a cool fire elemental. And then I played my first game of Magic against my dad. He didn't end up actually playing Magic much past the first like maybe 2 games or so, but it was enough to kind of get me hooked as I want to do more of this. And I had gone with a friend, my friend Seth, to buy we each got the same thing. We got a starter deck. And
what prompted you to buy those?
Seth's older brother, who was 3 years older, had heard about it from a friend.
Gotcha.
And this game came out, just came out, and you can get it at comic book stores, and it's like D&D with cards. And at this point, we were into the concept of D&D, but had never played it.
Mm-hmm.
We thought it was cool, but we didn't know how to play it or anything. And then these cards, like, we could just play ourselves. And so we got these starter decks. And I remember playing this game on Seth's kitchen table, kind just of funnily enough. Yeah. Yep. Where I had a dancing scimitar, a 1/5 flyer, and he had a hypnotic specter. And I kept attacking the scimitar into his hypnotic specter. And he kept blocking, but then he wouldn't attack me back because he didn't want to get,
He didn't want to trade 1 damage for two for a card and 2 life. Okay, well.
And so what ended up happening was we didn't really know the rules. Like, it's funny because you look at later in Magic, they put something like walls can't attack, right? Mm-hmm. on a wall. And I remember people being like, why did they put walls can't attack? That's just, obvious. Yeah. Well, we didn't know that. Right. We thought you could attack with walls. Like, was there a rule that you couldn't? I mean, the answer was yes, actually there is. But
there was, but it didn't say so on the card. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so Wall of Water, for example, it's a 0/5. You pay a blue to give it +1/+0. Well, the way Revised cards were templated, it just said +1/+0. It didn't say until end of turn. So we thought it just like stacked. So Wall of Water was just like this beater.
So Wall of Water could not only attack, but it had permanent fire breathing?
Exactly. And
sweet.
And initially when we got more cards, we would just put all our cards together. We didn't have any concept of building a deck. Mm-hmm. So like literally for a while, every time we got new cards, we would just put them in our pile and like we would just have these giant, decks of cards that were horribly inconsistent, had tons of horrible cards, but it didn't matter. That's all what we were all doing.
And that was, I guess it was good that they came with a bunch of basic lands in there, right? Because if you were just jamming.
Yeah. So all of the decks had basics in them. Or all the starter decks.
Because people might not even know what a starter deck.
Yeah, so it was a 60 card deck that had, I don't know, about 20 lands in it. I don't know if it was exactly 20 or in that range.
It felt like it.
3 rares, 10, 12 uncommons, and the rest commons. And the idea was, it was a starter deck. You could just literally open it up, shuffle it, and play. It wasn't good because it would be 5 colors of cards with 4 or 5 lands of each color.
Right.
I mean, people probably don't remember, but in the old sealed decks, the lands you opened were what you were restricted to using. You could get up to like 5 more or something.
I can't, BDM told me that and I couldn't believe it.
Oh, it's just crazy.
That's hardcore.
If you want to know how good of a game Magic is, just look at how many unfun cards and rules there were at its inception.
No kidding.
Like, I mean, we have a whole episode about Alpha where me and TBS wax eloquent about how much of a masterpiece Alpha is. It really is. You can't, and Arabian Nights I think is awesome. You can't say the same about Legends and Antiquities, and certainly not Fallen Empires and Homelands, and even Ice Ages got a lot of stinkers.
Yeah.
Magic survived like tons of bad sets, like really bad. Like Legends is maybe and Antiquities are the two most unplayable sets. Like
Right.
Homelands and Fallen Empires have a lot of unappealing cards that are low power level and whatever. Legends is like a mix of Moat, Abyss, Mana Drain, just horrendously unfun and overpowered cards, and a bunch of glyphs that impact your walls and 0/4s and 0/1 kobolds. And so it's like a combo of all busted cards and unplayable cards, but it doesn't matter. Magic was so fun. We just put these cards together and played. And eventually, with some of the people at the local store that me and Seth started walking to, it was like about, 6 blocks from my house, Dragon's Den, would kind of took mercy on us. And they just I remember this guy, Dale, helped us build decks. He's like, hey, well, actually what you want to do is take out you'll make a red-black deck. We'll just take all your red and black cards and we'll cut it down to, 20 spells, 20 creatures, 20 lands.
Okay.
Well, obviously we know now that's not really the right ratio, but trust me, these were like eons better than what we were doing before. And I started to understand that you could actually build decks with themes and you could, put cards together in ways that really made sense. Limited wasn't even really a thing besides sealed deck at this point.
The funny part is you didn't necessarily know the rules then. That was really common, but also the rules were a lot different. They had not at that point, the stack wasn't used in the way that it is now, right?
Yeah.
It existed, but it wasn't used across the board or something.
Well, there was weird things it's not now. Now it's pretty intuitive. I cast, Giant Growth. You respond. You lightning bolt my creature, and it dies. Mm-hmm. There are certain types of effects resolved before other types, and there were interrupts. So cards like Counterspell that were countering a spell, they happened in a window before any other spells could be played. So for example, there's a card, a lot of people might be familiar with, Balance, which makes it so each player has an even amount of lands in play and creatures and cards in hand. And then there's a card, Zeranorb, which you could sacrifice a land to gain 2 life. There was a period of time where you could go, I cast Balance. Okay, you don't have any interrupts, so I know it's going to resolve, but it hasn't resolved yet. I'm going to sack all my lands to Zeranorb.
Oh, yeah. Good, clean fun. There's so many busted things that people did back then.
And it's just also just not intuitive. Like I said, Magic just had a lot of really bad rules at this point.
Yeah.
And you know what? That was still fine. That was enough to kind of the good stuff was so good that it didn't reduce people's enjoyment to the point where they didn't want to play it. Whereas even though there is, plenty of unfun parts to the original stuff, but we were just in such a different world back then. I know some people were competitive back then. It wasn't us.
Yeah. So at what point did you start getting competitive? Because I kind of want to take us to your first competitive success, maybe qualifying for the Pro Tour for the first time. When did that happen for you? And was it a lot later?
Yeah, we're going to have to do a big time jump there, which is funny because that's kind of how my Magic career is, where I picked up my first set of cards in 94 and I played to the point where my parents were made me stop playing because in high school I was getting bad grades.
Oh, okay.
And I was going to a private Catholic high school at the time, which was a really good school. It was Bishop O'Dowd in Oakland. I really liked it, but they'd said hey, we're not going to pay for the school if you don't take it seriously. So you need to stop playing Magic and get your grades up. So I actually quit Magic for kind of the rest of high school. I played it only my freshman year. So then I ended up picking it back up in college. So there's about a 10-year time jump from when I first picked up a Magic card to the first time I played in a PTQ. Not even one, but PTQ.
Wow. Okay. And then what did it take to get you to win a PTQ?
I would say at the risk of sounding arrogant, but I'm just going to go ahead.
Tell us the truth.
Well, basically, by the time I started playing in PTQs, I was pretty good already. I'd spent a lot of time thinking about Magic and playing local drafts and stuff like that. The first bunch of PTQs I played in, I didn't want to go to the Pro Tour because I was like, I don't want to fly to a tournament. That doesn't make any sense. That's just ridiculous. So I had a string where I conceded to David Ochoa in my first PTQ so he could make top 8 because we played for top 8 and I didn't care about winning.
And you were friends with him.
Yeah. And then we were good friends. Me and Webb go way back. And then my second and third PTQs, I top 8'd both of them and then conceded to people who wanted to go to the Pro Tour.
Really?
Yeah.
You were just a dream crusher, just scooping all your friends in the whole time?
I mean, I just
That's crazy.
wanted to play in these tournaments because I enjoyed playing in tournaments. I enjoyed competition. Like in the time I wasn't playing Magic, I was playing competitive Street Fighter because I just have this, I don't know, need to compete against other people. It's just something that I really care about.
It's built into you, yeah.
And then what changed for me was there was a pro tour in San Diego, in California. I could drive to it. And I was like, well, I want to play in this one. So I want a PTQ for that pro tour.
And then you just won a PTQ? Man, you must have been really killing it.
I think I was just pretty good compared to the folks I was playing locally who weren't bad. Northern California had a really good scene, but I don't know, Magic's something I've always like spent a lot of time on and a lot of effort on. And I mean, it's not weird for me to say I was good then. I ended up being one of the kind of the great players in Magic. So again, this isn't a time for for mincing words.
No, it's true though. I mean, if we, fast forward to 15 years after that or whatever. But do you remember, like, so when you won your PTQ, that wasn't some big moment of elation for you where you finally broke through? It was more like you finally decided to win one, basically?
Yeah, I mean, it was both. I still was really excited to do it and play and play in the thing. And I remember.
What did you play? What do you remember?
It was a sealed PTQ. It was Mirrodin Darksteel sealed. I ended up drafting a control deck in the top 8 with a Skeleton Shard. It's a 3-mana artifact. You can pay a black and tap it to return a artifact creature from your graveyard to your hand. So a really grindy deck with Skeleton Shard. It was kind of what carried me to victory there. And I remember being like, okay, awesome. I really wanted to do this. I met my goal. Like I kind of just like had these goals in steps. And like the first one was like, I want to top 8 a PTQ. And then I did that. I'm like, all right, cool. And then I'm like, I want to play in the PT. So I kind of set things up so that I was able to do that. And then once I played in the PTs, my goals of course changed. But my first goal was like, I want to play in a PT. I want to play in one of these pro tours. I want to win a PTQ and do that.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I ended up, managing to get there and being able to drive down to San Diego and play in the pro tour.
What are your memories of your first pro tour? Were you intimidated?
Oh, definitely. I was like pretty nervous. I drove down with some good friends of mine. And part of the reason I played Magic, how it's always been true, is the people around Magic and having like, whenever people would ask me, how do I compete in Magic? How do I either become a pro or play in the pro tour or just get more serious? And I think that the number one thing is to find a group of like-minded people. And at this time it was, Webb, David Ochoa, and my roommates, Eric and Matt and Ryan. And all of us were really into this. Obviously we'll talk about Paul as he comes up, but he's obviously a big part of this too. But having this like group of friends who would take the, 2-hour drives to go to the PTQs from Northern California, or sometimes the 6-hour drives to LA for a PTQ, and wanted to drive down. Like when I drove down to San Diego to play in the Pro Tour, I was the only one. There's two of us in the car were playing in the PT, and the other 3 people, they were going for side events. This is when PTs had tons of like side events and PTQs. And if I didn't have that crew always, I wouldn't have tried so hard to play in these tournaments. I wouldn't have been able to go to all these, because one of the things that really instilled in me, and this kind of segued into Team CFB later, is I always felt it was a win if someone in our car won. It didn't have to be me. Of course, I wanted it to be me because I like winning. But if we went to a PTQ and Eric won the PTQ, we would all be so stoked. We'd go to Applebee's and have our celebratory dinner. The cool thing about it is there was enough of us and we were good enough that almost always one of us did well. And that kind of gave us that extra fuel to keep going. Because even if you go, 1-2, but your roommate top 8's the PTQ, you're like, next time that could be me. You know?
And were you guys really testing together a lot for these too?
Yeah, and this is back when, we tested for PTQs. Like it's funny, but that's where we were at. That's the level of competition we had. So of course, we were testing for the PTQs and really just learning how to play Magic. Getting our first Magic Online account, and we all shared because it was expensive, and just getting used to like, oh, this is how you play. This is how you kind of get better at this game.
What was your connection with the pro scene at that time? This is your first pro tour, so I'm assuming you weren't super well connected there. But like, were you aware of it? Were there people at the pro tour who you had heard of, or who were you were a fan of, or somebody like that?
Oh, totally. Even the years I wasn't actively playing Magic, like literally just Magic cards were just sitting, like the cards I had were just sitting in my house. I would follow the sideboard. This is where all the pro coverage was. I knew who all the pros were. I mean, this is obviously what pulled me back in, or at least a part of it. And I remember I have this like, enduring memory of being at the San Diego Convention Center, which you have been at many times. You know, how they have that big kind of hallway on the side before you go into the rooms. It's big and airy. And I remember seeing Kai, Dirk, and Marco, Kai Bud, Dirk, Beborowski, and Marco Bloom, like the Phoenix Foundation, the best and most winning team of Magic forever, right? Like,
yes.
We're talking 3-person teams who competed in team tournaments. And I remember thinking like, whoa, those guys are all here. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Like I've told Kai about that because it's just funny because we're on the same like team now, or we test together and stuff. And, we make fun of Kai a lot because he's a grumpy old man at this point.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, like I remember seeing those guys and it was just like a highlight of my PT experience was like, I get to see the guys I've read about. These guys are celebrities to me. I remember like seeing all, a bunch of the other pros I had read about and thought, this is so cool. Like, even if I'm not going to win here, like it's really cool to get to see this.
How did you do at that PT? Just curious.
I was really happy with how I did. I went 8-7. So I made day 2. There's 15 rounds, 5 drafts. This is all draft PT.
Oh my God.
I know.
Don't even say that to me, dude.
And, so 5 drafts, 3 rounds each, made day 2, didn't end up cashing, didn't end up making money at the PT, but going 8-7 made me feel like, hey, I could do this. Another win, I would have made money. Another 2 wins, I would have made good money. Another 3 wins or something, I would have made top 8 or whatever.
Yeah.
And it felt like my matches were close. I lost to Ifro, I lost to Jerry T. These are both guys I recognize at this point. It was an interesting experience, especially since, and this persisted for a while. So it's hard to describe limited back then because right now limited is so much more standardized. And this isn't a bad thing. I'm not like railing against the fact that people are better at limited now.
Mm-hmm. It's your fault.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's us, it's the Lords of Limited, it's 17 lands, Court of Calls, like all of this combined means people have a much better understanding of limited and there's much more information out there about it. And that also kind of lines up such that people end up being in a spot where there's a lot of like common knowledge about limited that didn't exist back then. Back then, there was just way, way, way fewer articles, way fewer sources to really get an understanding of limited, and people just didn't really know what was going on. And I remember I had a lot of opinions about it that were very much not the standard ones. And I drafted some kind of weird decks as a result. And this happened in my first couple PTs. And I think I won more as a result. I may not have. I don't know what the world is where I, had a different approach because I don't get to go back and see that. But it was cool me feeling like I was doing my own thing and playing cards people didn't like. And like that was something you can't do quite as much in limited these days. Obviously, there's some edges you can look for, but at this point, everyone tries everything. Back then, there were just many fewer drafts firing just worldwide, and no one's talking about them, that I would be playing these rares that other people didn't think were good. Like Death Cloud, black, 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 X. Each player discards X cards, sacks X land, sacks X creatures, loses X life. I thought it was a bomb. I drafted a deck completely around it at that PT where my goal was to put a bunch of artifacts into play and then Death Cloud everything else away.
Oh, sweet.
Including Relic Bane, which is a enchantment you put on their artifact, and at the beginning of their upkeep, they lose 2 life. So I'd put it on one of their like talismans or equipment and then Death Cloud everything away. Then they would just die because when you discard your whole hand and lose all your land and creatures, you don't do anything for 5 turns.
Right. And you've also got a nice head start on the life total. That's really good.
Yeah, so that kind of stuff I always found to be really satisfying, and I did a bunch of that at that PT. And even though again I didn't crush the PT or anything, I came out of that PT feeling like, man, I really know, I could do this. This is something I could do. And a lot of my confidence was like, I played in my first PTQ and I lost playing for top 8 or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, I could do this. I know. I watched the top 8s. I mean, I loved going to PTQs. I'd watch the whole thing even if I didn't do well. Part of it is you had someone from your car probably doing well at the time. But even without that, I just loved watching high stakes Magic. And I mean, PTQ top 8s are high stakes. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Mm-hmm. And at all points at the PTQ, at my first PT, I felt I belong here. Like I never got the sense that I didn't.
Did going to that PT and kind of putting your ideas out into the world and saying, hey, I have a voice here. I belong here. Did that light a fire for you to be more open to traveling and to try to pursue those goals?
Yeah, I mean, after San Diego, I'm like, I'm going to play in the next PT.
You were in.
And this is what I want to do. And well, I still wasn't at the point where I was like, okay, well, I still have to do school, and I can't just like bounce or whatever. But I ended up queuing for PT London and Philadelphia in pretty short order the next year or so.
Okay, so but you, so you were willing to travel, to say the least. So after this PT, and after you kind of got your head around the idea of, okay, I'm going to be doing this. This is a goal that I'm going to have. You joined a really important group for your life. You joined the Chiantourage. You met Paul somehow, and can you talk to us about when you met Paul Chian and how you what ended up happening with you guys as far as living together, testing, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at maybe like the 5 people most impactful on my Magic career, Paul is number 1. Like he is and I think a lot of people who maybe have started playing over the last couple of years, at this point, even last 5, 6 years, 7 years, may not have as good of a sense of who he is, especially if you didn't catch his stream when he was a full-time streamer. One of the first full-time Magic streamers.
He was like near the top.
I consider him and like Kenji and like Gabby to be kind of like the old guard when it comes to like, get really doing that. And Caleb, those guys. But Paul was a very respected and feared player back then. And, we'll get to that point because obviously when I met him, that wasn't the case. And he was the person who really him and me together showed each other that we could do this thing, that we could go out and do this. And it was worth it. And we, and the way we met is kind of funny. It was kind of via Magic Online. So what happened is we both qualified for Pro Tour Philadelphia. This is in 2005. So this is about a year after my first PT. And so I just looked up the schedule. So it looks like I played at PT San Diego and then didn't play the next couple PTs, the next 3. This is when there were 6 in a year. Mm-hmm. But wow. I ended up queuing for Pro Tour Philadelphia, and it was funny. Me, Chion, and Webb all played the Blue-White Mind's Desire Cloud of Fairies Snap extended deck to win PTQs, even though I didn't even know Paul at the time. We just happened to play the same deck, which was funny. So I go to that Pro Tour, and Paul and I are introduced to each other by Adam Klein, who was one of the original Moto grinders, good at, played a bunch of PTs. A lot of people knew who he was at the time. And we were all in the same clan, Dragon Quest, which is
Dragon Quest was the clan.
Yeah, old Moto clan. And so me and Paul and Adam were all in the same clan, though me and Paul didn't know each other. And Adam's like, hey, you guys should meet. You guys are in the same clan. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And me and Paul just really hit it off. Like, I mean, you've seen us around each other, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It's
you guys are best friends. I mean, that's the vibe. Yeah.
And that was from day one. It was funny. Like, it's just some people you really click with,
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I felt similarly about Paul when I first met him. He reminds me exactly of all my friends from high school and stuff. I just like very comfortable around him. Yeah. Yeah.
And so we hadn't tested together because we met at the Pro Tour. And this was a Pro Tour format they've never repeated. It was the Skins Pro Tour.
Oh, yeah.
So weird. So how it worked.
That's based off of a golf style tournament. Yeah.
It was kind of dumb, so they never did it again. But how it worked was it was triple elimination, which means when you got your third loss at any point, you were done. Like that was it. You were out of the tournament. There was no prizes based on final standings. That's not how the tournament worked. But every time you won a match, you just won a cash prize.
Yes.
And as the matches went on, the prizes scaled up. It started at 100 per match, then it was 200, and then at the end we were playing 1,000 per match. And
it's really cool in concept. I don't know if it plays out quite as well in real life. But
I remember like a big bummer was you made day 2 at 4-2, and then you lose round 1 of day 2 and you're done.
And you're out. Yeah.
But I lost playing for day 2. I went 3-3 in the tournament. I was pretty proud of our deck, though. Me and Webb tested together, just the 2 of us, because we were the only 2 people qualified that we knew, and this was well before we had a chance to like figure out, what pro teams look like or anything like that. And we come up with the same kind of gifts deck that a lot of that ended up winning the tournament and a lot of the good players were playing. So I ended up not making day 2. Paul made day 2 and had a pretty deep run, but he ended up a round short of qualifying for the next PT. So he had a good run, but it wasn't quite good enough. And so then we had time because he was done mid-Saturday, and the Pro Tour is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we did what became another really big part of why I stayed on the PT and what drew me into Magic, which was money drafting.
Oh yeah, this is huge.
And so the way it worked for the longest time really was it was like 2-on-2 or 3-on-3 are the most common, and the most common denomination we played for was $20 a head, which was a lot of money to us. I mean, this is back when we were both like I was kind of half-heartedly finishing college.
Yeah.
Paul was just at the time just kind of gaming, like he wasn't really doing.
He was floating a bit. Yeah, he's younger. He's younger than you too.
Yeah, he's a little younger. He like started going to college when he was 13. Like
literally when he was 13, by the way, dear listener. Like he's not joking.
Yeah, which I think he would say ended up not being a very good, plan for his life. Mm-hmm. Ended up not working out, and so he was kind of at loose ends at the time. And Magic was kind of where he landed,
as well as your couch.
Yes, well, that was later, but yes, yeah. As many players, and we know that's kind of what happened, right?
Yeah,
and so $20 plus all the cards, like. You really cared if you won or you lost. That's a big swing. I mean, I probably went there with $100 in my pocket or something.
Totally. And this is also when everybody crashed in the same room, right? Like you'd have five or six people.
Me, Webb, and Adam Klein were sharing a cheap hotel room in Philadelphia that was like probably $60, $80 a night.
Right.
It wasn't the safest area. Like,
not that you had anything to steal outside of your Magic cards anyway, but
no. Yeah. So Paul and I were like, hey, let's find some drafts. And it was cool because at the time, no one knew who we were. Mm-hmm. Like, we were just complete unknowns. And we ended up playing against some guys. And this is the same weekend I met Cedric Phillips. So he was our opponent.
Did you play against him?
We did like 4 drafts in a row against Cedric's team, and we just shellacked them. We beat them every draft, including Paul crowning it off with a Mind Blaze. That's a 5 and a red card, a sorcery. You name a card and you name a number, and if they reveal their hand and deck, and if they have that number of that card, they take 8 damage. And this is like round 3 of the draft. So we've seen so much of each other's decks that
oh my God,
Paul's able to just Mind Blaze Cedric right out of the tournament.
That's a sweet team draft card.
Yeah.
Oh, and it was against Ced?
Yeah, it was against Cedric.
Ced's just getting blasted here. This is brutal.
Yeah. So and at the end of that weekend, Paul and I stayed in touch. We had such a good time that weekend. We were both like, right. This was his first PT, my second PT, or whatever. My third PT, actually. I guess I had it was my second PT as well. It was my second PT. I ended up going to PT London a couple months later, but I hadn't played in that yet. And so we were both very much like, hey, we want to do this thing. I think we can do this thing. And one of the cool things about the PT system, which remained the same for like 20 years, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. We did not know how good we had it till it was gone.
Yeah.
It was very regimented. Like you knew what you could do. Like if you win a PTQ and play a PT and then top 32 that PT, you queue for the next one. You do that a few times and you get enough of a status that you're queued for maybe multiple PTs. You do well enough in a calendar year a season, a Pro Tour season, which is about a calendar year. You get a level which has benefits up to and including flights and hotels and stuff like that.
Right.
And we're like, hey, we want to do this. This is, 2005. We didn't go all in at this point, but we started playing in like PTQs, and I actually convinced Paul to move up to Davis with me and Eric and Matt. Cause he was just crashing with his friend Alex at the time. And, we're like, hey, we're playing a ton of Magic here. Like you should just do it. It's not, and he's like, all right. So he just grabs his bag and he ends up living on our couch for about the next year and a half or so.
Crazy, right? I mean, isn't it crazy to think of that now?
Oh yeah. It's just wild.
Yeah. What was it like day to day during that time? Where you guys were forging your skill sets in a cauldron of Magic Online and $5 footlongs or what?
Yeah. So basically what ended up happening was, again, it was Eric and Matt Bennett is his nickname, Matt Benjamin, but we would call him Bennett because at Worlds 2004, which was in San Francisco. None of us were qualified, but we all went because it was just like such a big time. Mm-hmm. And we played a bunch of vintage with these Italian guys, and they kept saying Ben, and when like good things would happen. So that's where he got that nickname. But we would me, Matt, and Eric were all in school, UC Davis at the time. And so I would go to some of my classes. I wasn't the most diligent student, though I did end up graduating.
You made it across the finish line, yeah.
I did for, unclear amounts of value. I'm glad I finished, but, you want to know a fun fact? I've never submitted a resume anywhere.
You haven't?
No, I've never done that. So
that's funny.
I don't think the fact that I graduated has had a whole lot of bearing on where I'm going, but, whatever. It's a good school. You get out of it what you put into it is kind of the way I feel, and I did not put as much into it as I could have, for sure. Mm-hmm. And then Paul was just playing Magic, but really we were all just playing Magic. Like we were playing so much Magic, like whether it was Magic Online at all hours of the day, going down to the local store to do drafts, a couple days a week, and then every weekend there was a PTQ or a Grand Prix trial. This is back when we didn't have buys, but if you won a Grand Prix trial, you got 3 buys at the next Grand Prix. And there were enough Grand Prix that between all those, we could play in most of the events, and we certainly did plenty of that.
Do you look back at that time fondly?
Oh, totally. We didn't know, again, there's things I would have done differently. Like we didn't live a very healthy or balanced lifestyle. Right. I mean, I think a lot of greatness is born out of obsession, unfortunately. Like that's just kind of how it goes. But I wish we had done a little bit more to expand our horizons and been a little healthier. It wasn't great for any of us in that sense. Mm-hmm. But I don't regret the camaraderie or the amount of skill we gained at Magic. Like that, those parts were all great.
Yeah, well, because that is one thing that I've hung out with you, a ton at this point, and you and I have been at a lot of live events before, and I've seen people ask you questions before. Sometimes we fielded them here on the show, and a lot of people, say like, I want to do what you did. I want to, go all in on Magic. Now, these days, you don't hear that as often, but, over the years, I've heard people say that to you a lot, and your answer, I think, is somewhat unsatisfying to them sometimes, where you say, I wouldn't recommend it unless, certain circumstances come up. If a door opens for you to do it, you've told them, go ahead and give it a try if it's within reason. But, you said you felt like you had to give up a lot of hours and time, and as you put it here, like expanding your horizons or being a little too focused during that time in your life. But that is what it took, right? To get you that level of intense practice or whatever you want to call it, that you and Paul went through for that stretch. That was a big reason why you're who you are now as far as how good you got at the game, right? I mean, big sacrifice.
Can you think of any skill, hobby, profession that has extreme outliers in terms of what it takes to be good at that doesn't require basically obsession to be good at?
No, not even close. I don't think there's anybody who's just
do you think the best chess player, the best pianist isn't obsessed with those things?
And they've probably given up huge swaths of what you would call like a normal, balanced, healthy life to get to that point.
I mean, the Malcolm Gladwell has the 10,000 hour rule, which is like after 10,000 hours, that's how long it takes to master something.
Yeah.
That's kind of nonsensical in the sense that that's a good catchphrase, but I don't know how rooted in reality it was.
Right.
But I mean, I probably played 30,000 hours of Magic if you count all the time I spent thinking about Magic and all that stuff. And it didn't come easy.
No.
I enjoyed doing it, but part of the reason I say that that I'm very lucky to have gotten the things I've gotten out of it is that I could have been this passionate, obsessed, whatever you want to call it, about something else. It just happened to be Magic, and it happened to be there was opportunities there, and it happened to be that I had the right combination of aptitude and desire and willingness to put time in, and being in the right place at the right time, and drawing the land on the third turn when I kept a 2-lander enough times in the right spots that it worked out for me. But I don't know. You look at people who are this into World of Warcraft. Well, I know there are definitely some opportunities there, but it's not to the same level as Magic. Magic had a surprising amount of opportunities. I was into fighting games, right? Like Street Fighter before. Mm-hmm. The Street Fighter competitive scene is just I have so much respect for all the people who get there because there was no money there.
Yeah.
The actual none. It was just
for the love. Yeah.
It was just the love. And that's really cool. I mean, I played at some of those tournaments. I was never good enough to really advance. But I really enjoyed it. the folks who do that, and then, some people have managed to make careers out of this for sure, but there's just so few opportunities there compared to Magic. And then, a different level entirely is poker, right? Poker is like to Magic what Magic is to fighting games in terms of there's tons of money in poker.
Yes.
I think it's, I think it's less fun from what I've seen from the people I know who've played it, but but that doesn't change the fact that like, if this is something that you chose to spend all your time on, you could get rewarded. But the thing that I've learned about all this is there are some people who have just like decided, right? Oh, I want to be the best at poker. I want to be the best at chess. This, I think, is the thing that makes the most sense to me, whatever. Most people I know who I consider great at things didn't make that calculation. They didn't say like, oh, this is a lucrative field to go into. They thought, hey, I'm obsessed with Magic. I'm going to keep playing Magic, or chess really has captured me, or whatever it is. And it kind of has worked out in a lot of cases, but that's kind of looking at it. That's reverse engineering it.
It is.
I didn't go into Magic because I thought it would lead to a really rewarding career. It has. I went into Magic because I opened a starter deck when I was 11 and I loved the pictures.
Yeah. and took it from there.
And then the competitive scene in 2003 and 2004 was like exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah. So after a few years of grinding, building up your skill set, working with Paul and all that kind of stuff, you found yourself in Berlin in 2008 at the PT.
Yeah. So
and then it all changed.
It definitely did, because 2 weeks before Berlin, I played in a PTQ, and I ended up dropping in the last round so Tom Martell could make top 8 of the PTQ, because I was basically like, well, I'm not, I might be qualified next year, who knows, but I've kind of done this Magic thing. This is basically the first year where I played Magic full time. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have a good year, So like at the end of 2007, me and Paul both became pros. Like we had gotten to the level where, we had all our flights paid for. We were queued for all the PTs. We got appearance fees. And then 2008, like we both did badly, like up until that point. Berlin was near the end of the season. So I was like, and at this point I had finished college, and I'm like, all right, well, I guess after this year I have to get a real job because this isn't sustainable.
Right.
And then I went to Berlin, and me, Paul, and Patrick Chapin ended up going out there pretty early and testing. This is one of the like most rigorous testing setups I've ever had, where we were all in a cheap hostel in Berlin that was a converted elementary school.
Okay. So did they keep the desks?
The desks weren't there, but it was definitely like they hadn't changed like the wall decorations and everything like that. Mm-hmm. And we were met there by Manuel Bucher and eventually Wafo Tapa and the Ruel brothers. But we just like played Magic all day, nothing else to do there. And we would walk to the grocery store and buy these like rotisserie chickens. I remember Chapin was like loving those. That's like, that's his meal. He likes that, yeah. And we would just do that over. We took one break where we actually went out to some of the clubs and stuff, and that was kind of fun. Me and Paul were both offered illicit substances. Chapin was not, but that was a fun break. But for the most part, it was just like 12, 14 hours a day. Because at this point, I mean, we didn't even have like a way to connect to the internet except for the lobby of the hotel had these computers you could pay to use for every 10 minutes. Cafe thing. Oh yeah. So we would like check our mail every couple of days or something to make sure. But we ended up with this Elves deck, and it was a funny situation where Elves was not only the best deck in the tournament. If you weren't playing Elves, you also didn't respect Elves. Oh. So everyone who knew how good Elves was just played it because it was busted. This is Elves with like Glimpse of Nature, Heritage Druid, like what you consider Legacy Elves is basically this deck. Mm-hmm. Like this is the effectively
combo
the same.
Elves, yeah.
And everyone who knew how good it was just opted to play it. So there weren't very many people playing hate against it. I think Nassif was the only one. He actually broke the format with this Mono Blue Fairies deck. But everyone else, you either played an Elf Mirror, because there ended up being 6 Elves decks in the top 8, or you played against someone who was not prepared to beat Elves. Mm-hmm. And I remember playing the deck, and our build had some weird stuff. Well, literally Weird Harvest, which ended up not being a very good card. But what we got right was we had 4 Thoughtseize and 4 Umezawa's GT on the sideboard. Such a good, just great plan.
And Thoughtseize was like brand new at the time, right?
Yeah, this is 2008. They came out in 2008 in Lorwyn.
Yeah.
And so I ended up winning the PT. I ended up, making top 8 at 12-4. I remember playing for top 8 against.
Wait, so is this your first top 8 as well?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, man. What an exciting day.
So I remember playing for top 8 against maybe the best Thai player. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name because I'm just going to murder it. But he was playing Blue Red Desire. And
who was? I want to know who it was. Was he the one that was the captain of the Thai team?
It's
Therawat Chalvarinder?
No.
He's the guy that's kind of the guy now on the Thai scene. Because I remember they ended up making the finals of the World Magic Cup. And I had to pronounce all their names, and it was crazy.
Well, I can find it very easily because I was already at the Sukum Kiwanat.
Okay. And you played him in the top 8?
I played him 4 top 8.
4 top 8. Uh-huh.
He ended up 20th after losing to me. But he was playing Blue Red Mind's Desire, and I remember post board we didn't have a 1-turn win. We took out the Grape Shot. That was our combo kill card.
Yeah.
But post board you'd go off, draw your whole deck, Thoughtseize them twice, and then play 2 Thorn of Amethyst. That was our combo finish. But
you had a whole bunch of elves on the battlefield to just.
But I remember him suspending Lotus Bloom and clearly going to go off when it came out. And I remember thinking I'm going to do it. I'm going to win because I knew I could go off a turn before. And then I didn't know if I was going to make top 8. And what ended up happening was Kenny Oberg. I don't know if you remember him.
I do.
He was playing Tezzerator. It was this
that was the deck he was famous for.
Yeah, the blue-red Tezzeret kind of control deck with Chalice of the Void, and Engineered Explosives, and Trinisphere, and all this cool stuff. He ended up winning in extra turns when he was locked already for top 8, but he knew that if he won, I would most likely be 8th, and we would play round 1, and it was a really good matchup for him.
Oh. I mean, he had Engineered Explosives and
Chalice and Trinisphere and Fire Spout and all this other stuff.
Oh, my God.
And so then we got the deck list.
So he wanted that. He's like, bring me that guy.
Yeah, so he could have drawn with his opponent and they both made top 8. He chose to play to knock them out, and partially because he thought he would play against me, which he ended up doing. So Paul and I were testing the matchup the night before, and after losing 9 games in a row, I'm like, I'm just going to go to bed. I don't care.
Yeah.
And then I start down 0-2 against him. So I'm like, all right, well, it was a good run. I made top 8. I'm really happy with that.
Yeah.
And then I just clawed my way back in and ended up winning all 3 of the other games.
God, I did not know you were down 0-2 in a bad matchup in your quarterfinal. That's insane.
So, because this is best of 5 in the top 8. And then I ended up beating Tomohiro Saito in the top 4. And I remember in game 5, I'm on the play. And I did the Psy Keep. And this is back when they were broadcasting the screen downstairs to all the people watching, and everyone was playing on the second level. And Paul told me this afterwards. He told everyone around, he's going to win. He's going to win. He's got it. That was the Psy Keep. He always does that when he's got such a good hand. And then I killed Saito on turn 2.
Oh, sick.
Which was really hard to do out of that deck. I think I had 2 in the whole tournament, maybe.
Uh-huh.
And then I played Big Z, Matej Zadelkai in the finals.
That's right.
And it was... that was the easiest of the 3 matches. I just had great draws, and Thoughtseize was really good in the mirror. So I ended up winning. Didn't
have it.
Yeah, most people didn't. Our build was worse in some ways, but Thoughtseize was definitely just A+ off of Overgrown Tombs and Elves of Deep Shadow and Birchlore Rangers. But I ended up winning the PT, and I remember calling my brother Antonio to tell him.
Yeah,
and you could if you look at the winning picture, actually, the picture that they chose, in the background. You have you had Cheon and Matt Benjamin, because he had qualified, and we played round 1 of his first PT, of course, holding up the big check in the background as I'm holding up the trophy.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. That's so cool.
And it was maybe I will do this magic thing, because I won, I think it was $40,000, and ended up being less because me and Paul had splits, so
this is a common thing that people don't know about, but a lot of times players will have a split with each other like that, where if I do well, I'll give you part of it. If you do well, you give me part of it. It helps even out the variance a little bit and gives a good sweat to your friends.
Yeah. So basically, Paul and I had a 20% split at almost every tournament. And up until this point, he had paid me a lot more than I'd paid him, because he had top 16 worlds the previous year, and he had won some Grand Prix and stuff. And Paul, up until this point, Paul had more accolades than I did.
Yeah.
But but then I got to kind of pay him back, which was awesome. You know, he got like $8,000 or whatever from me from the 20% split. And me and him and Bennett were just like, it was just so, I don't know. It was a life-changing amount of money, but even more than the money, it was just, again, affirmation that like, hey, maybe I can do this. I won a bunch of money. I got a bunch of points. So I was well set up for the next season, and I just won a PT. Like, how could I walk away after winning a PT?
Yeah. That was the ultimate, I'm going to retire. Never mind. Right. Like that happens seemingly all the time. But I mean, winning a PT is the type of thing that sucks you right back into it. So you win that PT. Then Worlds happens, and then there's the next PT after that. And that one was in Japan. And you somehow ended up making the finals of that PT as well. So you're just on like an insane heater. And you play against Gabriel Nassif, considered one of the GOATs. And you play a match that is an all-timer. It might be the best, most fun to watch, most interesting match to watch ever. I mean, there's other candidates, but it's on the short list. You and I even did a video that kind of was a precursor to the MTG breakdown videos that I did while we still traveled and stuff, where I sit down with a pro and go over one of the iconic matches from their career, and I can pause it and we can talk about like what was going through your mind, what were you thinking about, that type of stuff. You and I did the kind of proof of concept for that about this match. I'll put a link in the show notes. It's on YouTube, but this was a pure all-timer. I mean, one of the sickest. I've watched it a bunch of times before I ever did commentary, before when I was just playing PTQs. I watched that match a ton of times because, there was this really absurd interaction where you ended up with head games under a Windbrisk Heights, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And Nassif had a negate, which can counter it. Head games basically would wipe out Nassif's entire hand. He was on a 5-color control deck. And you were trying to set up to be able to resolve this thing through his negate. You knew he had negate, or at least suspected it. He refused to tap down enough, a great cost to him, by the way, to leave those shields down. And then you kept drawing stuff that you could put on the stack that was negatable, and he just refused to do it. It was a really, really fun match to watch. What was it like to be in your seat for it?
Oh, it was crazy because it was frustrating because I knew against almost anyone else, I would have been able to get them. But yes. Nassif, part of the reason he's one of the greatest of all times is he just has these moments of brilliance where he just sniffs it out. And like, he's one of the people who could figure that out. I mean, there are other people as well, but Nassif's one of the few people. And I'm not even saying that I would have necessarily won if I resolved head games, but I think I would have been in a really good position. Mm-hmm. And the biggest one was when I cast a Johnny Goldmane with just leaving Windbrisk Heights untapped, and he chose to not negate it, even though it made it really hard for him to win that game. But the head games would have been better, and I had the untapped land, and I had the attack to flip it post combat. But then he didn't counter it, and so then I didn't go for it, and it was just this back and forth. And I remember, I mean, that loss was one of the ones I care about most in my whole career. Not, again, it has nothing to do with the money. We actually split the money evenly. So, like, we weren't even playing for money. It was, I wanted to win another Pro Tour. You and Nassif did. Yeah. Yeah.
See, people don't. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really wanted to win another PT. I would have won 2 PTs in a row. How incredible. And I mean, I've never been back there, right? Like, I've top 8 at other PTs. I made the finals against Ellenbogen, a couple years ago. But I haven't won another PT. And it's not like I'm looking at that and thinking, oh, what could have been? But it's just like, I really wanted to win that, and it was such a sweet match. I'm really glad the match happened, and it's just, I don't know, part of the tapestry of Magic. I feel honored that I was in a position to be part of that. It could have been someone else. It just happened to be me.
Yeah, and it really is. I mean, that is a legendary match, and I highly recommend watching the original first, and then watching Luis and I's version of it. Just take an afternoon and enjoy it. It's great commentary on the first one. It was Randy and BDM. And they really did a great job doing that match justice. And then you can see it. And it's also funny just to see the different decks. I mean, the decks look different than now. Like Nassif's playing a 5-color control deck based off of these vivid lands that can tap for any color. And Lewis is playing like a black-white mid-range deck. It's just not what you would expect these days anymore. So, but again, another absolutely stunning finish for you, right? I mean, now you went from somebody who is around the PT vaguely, maybe about to fall off, to somebody who wins a PT and then almost wins the next PT, only losing to, again, all-time Hall of Famer Gabriel Nassif. And at that, it was very, very close. I mean, this was you bursting onto the scene. And the next kind of big step that ended up popping up for you was the formation of Channel Fireball. And then we'll also talk about the formation of Team Channel Fireball after that. But channelfireball.com was born right around this time, right?
Well, that weekend, actually. So what ended up happening was I had talked to John, Sasso and Mashi, who we ended up being the kind of the founders of Channel Fireball. It was through basically – it was John was the driving force, and he's still the CEO, and because his dad had started Superstars of Sports, which was a sports memorabilia shop in Cupertino. And the way it worked out, which was funny, was John and Mashi in high school got into Magic. And so John had kind of worked at his dad's shop and was doing more and more. And he was just like, John's really, really good at predicting things, like, and having vision.
Trends and stuff. Yeah. And
he was like, Magic is this. I don't know how that conversation exactly went, but John pushed for them to become a Magic shop, basically. And at this point, I mean, that's what it's done for the past, million years or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so, and the funny thing is I used to go to Superstars of Sports to trade for Magic cards. Me and Webb would go, and that's how we got our sets of power.
Because you were always on that hustle, right? Like that was a big part of your...
I mean, that was my summer job for like 2 years was just going around trading Magic cards back when that was more of a thing.
Just sharking people.
Well, what we do is we knew the cards John was buying. He always had really aggressive buy list prices. So we would trade for Visaras and Coat of Arms and Patron Wizards and Voltaic Keys that I knew he was paying $8, $6, $2, $1 for them. And we'd come in and we'd trade John a giant stack of these cards for a Mox Jet. And what's cool is you maybe haven't gone quite as deep as I have on the local store experience. I spent a lot of time in local game stores, but a lot of local game stores that would be like, I'm not trading you a Mox Jet for all that good stuff or for all that random stuff.
Yeah. Because they weren't really business people.
They were just Magic players who happened to own a store. Yeah. John was never that. Like John was a Magic player. John actually played in a couple PTs back then. But when he stopped playing in the PT and started running the business was when he was late at PT Paris to his round because he was selling cards.
Oh, okay. So that was the day.
and so then him and Mashi and some of the other guys, Alex Alpin, who were around then, had talked about like, we want to launch a Magic website. We have a really good idea. We'll show different videos. It'll be like TV channels. That's why I called it Channel Fireball. Plus, of course, the Channel plus Fireball Magic joke. It was like I think a really good combination. Funnily enough, we almost were Superstars.
Oh, really? Just kept the name. Yeah.
The person who owned superstars.com wanted like $150K for it.
Oh, wow.
And so we're like, nah, we'll be Channel Fireball instead, which I think ended up being a better name.
Yeah, more Magic specific. Yeah.
And CFB is a good little acronym, but so what ended up happening was I had already we had already made the deal. Like I had I had stopped working for Adventures On, which was blackborder.com, who had been my sponsor the entire time, right? Ever since like I first started playing in tournaments. But I really was excited about this future that we could run this website, and there was a lot we had to do, but we had already kind of planned on it. And so even though in Berlin, I wore an Adventures On shirt and the same in Kyoto, it's because that was like the last month that I was under contract with them.
I see.
But we were going to launch Channel Fireball. And when I made the finals of the tournament, I was like, this is the best time to announce it. Randy's interviewing me. So then we crashed the website as everyone just tries to find out what Channel Fireball is.
Oh,
but one of the first articles to ever go up was my tournament report from PT Kyoto.
Oh, yeah, that's great. God, that's really cool. What a time for you, right? I mean, you were popping off like back-to-back PT top 8s, including a win and a top 2. And you launched, a website that you had a big part in that ended up being a foundation of your career. What an incredible time.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, one of the things that's funny is like John and I didn't get paid the first year.
The whole year?
Well, we ran out of money. Like it was just more expensive to do all the things than we had.
Oh, okay. Because you guys are ambitious too, so you really ran it out.
Oh, and the revenue did not start right away. So
yeah,
I mean, we were. This is the kind of thing that's fairly common when you're doing this sort of like startup sort of mentality thing. And luckily, I mean, we both were able to do that. But I remember just being like, yeah, I believe in this. I want to keep going. And we ended up, the business ended up paying us back for our time and all that, and it working out great. But it wasn't just easy street from the beginning. I never really would describe it as that anyway.
Yeah. I mean, running a business is going to be hard no matter what. At what point then did Team CFB form and really make, at least in my experience with Pro Magic, this was still before I was doing coverage and stuff, but I was following Magic, the coverage and stuff. This was from at least for me, I don't know if it's true in general, but this was the first super team. I mean, this was like a lot of heavy hitters and a focused, big, dedicated team to doing as well as possible at PTs.
Well, here's the funny thing. For those of you who aren't really like well acquainted with like kind of the different generations and history of Pro Magic, there were multiple generations before ours, mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm. And what had happened was a ton of players quit. A lot of the best players quit to go play poker.
Yeah, and like poker boomed in the early 2000s.
2003, yeah. 2004.
Right.
And so and at that point, there had been super teams before. The reason Kai won 7 Pro Tours was that his team did a ton of practice and they knew, and they tested everything and they're really well prepared. But so many of these guys left to go play poker was part of it, or they kind of aged out where they pursued other opportunities, whether that was working in the financial industry. At this point, Chian had already left as well, and a bunch of people from that group left to go work for Pinnacle and Curacao, like to do sports betting.
Yep.
And the team, the pro scene kind of had not fallen apart, but like it had kind of scattered.
Yeah.
And I remember the first bunch of times I tested for PTs, even when I was on these kind of like bigger teams, it was like all online and no one did anything. And it was kind of like, this doesn't work. So I remember what ended up happening was we got together, and it wasn't like we chose all the people who were the best. It's just, we kind of congregated with all our friends. And whether that was at my parents' house in Oakland before PT San Diego, or we would rent an Airbnb or all get the same hotel, we would put a really high premium on trying to meet for like 2 weeks before a tournament. And it was pretty loose in the beginning because we didn't have a team name. We didn't consider ourselves even like a team as such. It's just like, hey, let's all meet up. But basically, PT Paris was when Team Channel Fireball formed. So PT Paris, that was the pro tour where we had the Stoneblade deck, which was probably the best deck we've ever built.
Yeah, that was such a landmark.
And that was Kibler and Raptor. Were kind of basically, they added two. They had 2 in the sideboard of their blue white control deck. The one that the blue white control deck Kibler loved, that he had played at Worlds previously, but didn't have any Stoneforge. It's like no one was really playing the card. And then I remember I watched them play a game against the Red Green Primeval Titan Valakut deck, which was one of the best decks.
Yeah.
And playing a Stoneforge on turn 2 and getting a Sword of Feast and Famine, and us kind of watching that game and looking at each other and being like, wait, what the hell?
Yeah.
And so they just went up to 4 immediately.
Yes.
And I mean, this deck also had Jace the Mind Sculptor, Mana Leak, Spell Pierce, Preordain. Like, it was just nuts.
It was ridiculous. Yeah.
And we ended up all playing it. And, Ben S, in typical Ben S fashion, got in the night before, got the deck, won the tournament.
Yeah.
Ben and Martel both made top 8. Me, Ifro, Owen, and one of our friends, Eric Landry's, all made top 16.
That was really the story that maybe gets lost a little bit, right? Is like, how many of you top 16 with that deck?
Yeah, I actually think we kind of ran a little bad to only have 2 in the top 8, given our overall win percentage with the deck. Mm-hmm. But what ended up happening was afterwards we were talking about it and we're like, we should just form a team and also kind of be a little more diligent about like how, like our structure. Cause like we kind of gave the deck to a bunch of people because we weren't really a team.
Right.
And it was fine. Like, it's not like we had hard feelings about that, but we're like, hey, we've had good decks a couple times in a row now. Kibler made the Doran deck at PT Amsterdam a couple PTs before that, where him and Brad made top 8, and really was at Paris where we kind of tightened it up, became Team Channel Fireball. Channel Fireball started sponsoring the whole team, and I mean, this ended up being one of the most dominant teams in Magic. Of the kind of 12 original members, 9 of us made the Hall of Fame.
That's incredible. That's insane.
We have me, PV, Kibler, Ifro, Owen, Brad, Raptor, Juza, Martin Juza, Ben S, and Shuhei. We all made the Hall of Fame, and then Matt Nass, Webb, and Conley were also integral parts of the team.
Yeah, incredible. And I mean, people might not even
out too, but
they might not even know that like Brian Kibler was on that team. Because he's known for Hearthstone now. If you've come to the game in the last few years, you're like, you mean the Hearthstone player, Brian Kibler? Yeah, that Brian Kibler. Turns out he won 2 PTs. Like, he's a straight up Hall of Famer, excellent Magic player, and was on Team CFB. I remember it changing the landscape in that it basically, you guys as a group up the level of commitment. You just said, look, we're going to fly out sooner. We're going to be a little tighter with our information. We're going to have more people, right? You guys had just volume of work that you could do, with a, say, 12-ish player team. Sometimes it was a few more when you'd have people come in, that were queued for a PT that were friends or good players or whatever. And, the other teams that were probably similar to the ones that you were on in prior years, where it was like, maybe a core of 3 or 4 players with another player thrown in or something, those couldn't keep up. Because you guys had the combination of raw output with the number of players, with the quality of work, because, it was top to bottom, pretty dang good players. I mean, if you were to, theoretically rank the players, I'm sure that never happened at any, dinners or anything.
that derailed our testing once.
That was probably the worst part, but...
Yeah, no, that was bad. That was Brad was writing an article for Star City when we were testing for PT Philadelphia, the first modern PT. And at some point he's like, oh, I should rank all the players. And let's just say, not a good idea.
Not a good idea. And this happened multiple times in multiple ways, and often ended up
It led to a lot of
frustrated walking away from the dinner table.
People getting mad, and the people who knew they were going to get ranked well, egging it on. It was not. I mean, look.
Yeah.
I would have done things differently. We were also a bunch of dudes in our mid-20s who are kind of finally really good at something. So
I think that's a good perspective on it. But the truth is that if you were to rank, who cares about ranking you guys within the team? I mean, you guys were, even the people who weren't highly ranked on the team were very good players who were capable of great finishes and adding a lot to the team. And to me, what stood out was that you really forced the other players to start forming similar teams. I know that, we started seeing teams in Europe forming as a result of Team Channel Fireball really having a dominant run, because you guys crushed it for a while. Like, it wasn't a one tournament thing. You guys smoked it. And then finally the other people were like, we have to do something. And you started seeing, we called them super teams, say 12 plus players of really excellent players.
Yeah, all grouping up. Pantheon was one of the big ones. They were our rivals, And
then what was the original Europe one called? It changed the name a bunch of times, but
I know what you're talking about, but I don't remember. I don't remember
the name, but but that was a whole bunch of the European pros. They all got together. I mean, they started doing like meetings with minutes and spreadsheets, and they were really going hard at it. What
was funny was, for a solid 2 years, we were just like leagues ahead of the competition, because we had, like you said, not only a lot of very good players, but we were just meeting in person and really putting in the hours. We actually ended up eventually falling behind because we weren't that organized. We didn't at some point we had Carson on our team and he started tabulating data and stuff. And there's definitely value in that, but we weren't as organized as you could have been.
I should tell my story.
Yeah, right.
Right.
I know what you're going to tell.
Yeah.
The example I like to use basically is what would Magic testing look like if instead of the first prize being $30,000, it was $300,000?
Mm-hmm.
It would look very different, and it would probably be some degree of different people as well, of course.
Right.
But at the time, we basically we put in the work, we were willing to do that, and we had a lot of great people, and we would meet for a good amount of time. But we also we're just kind of playing games, and we were enjoying going out to eat, and like we were having fun with the whole thing. It wasn't as work and kind of work like as it could have been. But I know that there has been some disappointment when certain coverage people got to see behind the curtain.
Yeah, I remember one time I went and Luis, I had asked if it was okay if I came out to the testing house to kind of sit in on the limited meeting, because I was going to be covering the draft at the Pro Tour, and I kind of wanted to get an idea of what the pros were thinking. Because at that time they weren't really talking much about what they thought about limited up until the PT was about 2 weeks in between when the set came out and when the draft was being played there. And so I was doing a ton of drafting myself and talking about it on the podcast and trying to like form my opinions. But I kind of wanted to figure out where the pros were at with it, because also, there's a good chance that, say, we watch Luis draft, and if I know what he thinks about stuff, then I can do a better job of covering it, because I'll know his preferences or the cards that they might be looking for. But there's a level of trust there too, because I would be in a meeting where they're openly discussing their strategic plans basically. And that's valuable information to them that took them a while to accrue and that isn't free. And so they would have to know me, trust me, to let me come in there and know that I wouldn't say anything, at all, to really anybody outside of that room. Even in coverage, I wouldn't say it. I would just keep my mouth shut. But at any rate, and I remember going there the first time and was like, this is it. Like everybody was just like eating snacks and just sort of talking about stuff loosely, and there was no like real plan. And hey, where's Ben? I don't know. He's up in his room. All right, well, we're just going to go anyway. And I remember I thought it was going to be all like spreadsheets and deadlines and stuff, but it turns out, yeah, not so much. So you had a really good run with Team CFB, and you're kind of in the full swing of your pro career. And then you got what ended up being an absolutely critical invite, Luis, for your career. Let's just be honest here. You got invited to play in the now defunct Community Cup.
So
in 2011.
What this was it was run by the Magic Online team, and I don't remember. Was it literally 8 people? I think it was.
I don't remember.
They picked like 8 people from the community, and they like would fly them out to WotC to play against Magic Online devs in like a multi-format, very high nonsense, playing for nothing. I mean, there was no actual. I think that the community won, everyone on Magic Online got a booster pack or something.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it was sweet. The timing worked out that I could fly back from PT Nagoya and just kind of go to Seattle.
Right. If I remember correctly too, you like top 8'd there or something, or you did really well there and then flew back, did the thing, and then went to a GP the next weekend and like top 8'd that or won it or something. Like, is that sound right?
Actually that did happen. I top 8'd Nagoya. I flew back, did the Community Cup, and then won GP Kansas City. Yeah,
and he won it like the next weekend. But at any rate, the reason that I bring it up here is because this is where Luis and I met for the first time. We got to hang out for the first time. And because I also got invited to that Community Cup, because podcasts have been out for a couple of years at that point, and I'm local to Seattle, so they didn't have to fly me out. And they were like, hey, let's, do you want to come down and do the Community Cup? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Right. So I go down, and who else is going to be there? And they're like, Luis Scott-Vargas. And I was a fan of Luis's. I rooted for him at the PT and stuff like that. Followed him on Twitter and all that. And so it was really cool because, Luis and I got to meet, and I remember talking to a mutual friend of ours, Zame. I was like, hey, so like, what's Luis like? Cause you had done some work with Zame and he had met you at the PT and stuff. And he's like, oh no, he's super chill. Like you'll like him and everything's going, oh, okay, cool. And I didn't really know what to expect or whatever, but we hit it off right away. Like your stupid humor, worked for me for whatever reason. And we ended up hanging out for most of that with Bing. Remember?
Yep.
Bing Luke. That was really fun.
Yeah, the Community Cup was awesome. It was cool because we got to play Modern when it wasn't a format yet.
Yeah.
So we got to play no ban list Modern because they hadn't decided what to ban yet. And I remember we knew the formats before this, and me and Sperling on my flight back from Japan built a bunch of Modern decks.
Yeah, and Bing had
next to each other. Oh yeah. Then we talked to the whole team, and like everyone kind of talked about the decks they like to play, and we figured it out because it was Modern unified where we all 8 decks had to like stack on top of each other and be legal. So only one deck could play 4 copies of a card or whatever. And we built like Fairies, Stoneblade, Elves, Hypergenesis, Burn, Doran, and like I don't remember what the last couple decks were, but
I don't remember either. But
we ended up just crushing them with all these decks. And then Hypergenesis, Glimpse, Bitter Blossom, Stoneforge, Mystic, Jace all got banned.
Yeah, and we took full credit for that. Like they probably were on it before that, but
it didn't take a genius to figure out that some of these cards needed to be banned. But we did get to be like, well, we got to play them in the Community Cup, and then they got banned.
Yeah, I mean, it was sweet. I got to play the Jace Stoneforge Vendilion Click, deck or whatever. That was actually the first time I had played Vendilion Click, and I remember you taught me how to play it. Because I had read about it, or maybe I played it in some random cube once or something, and I knew about the thing where you click them on their draw step. Like, I was aware of that. But I remember asking you, like, when do I not do that? Like, should I do that here? Do I wait? Like, is there a, like, if I have a counter spell, can I just wait to counter something and then play it on end step? Is that fine? Because I just didn't really understand, like, where the true power lied with the card yet. And you're like, no, it's flexible. Like, you can wait, you can do it on a, just, is there a specific card you care about? That type of thing. And you kind of walked me through how to play that. And I smashed with that deck. I mean, playing Modern with those cards at the time was just dumb. I mean, a lot of them are legal now.
All those are legal now.
Yeah, because Modern caught up. But the Hypergenesis deck was easily the most broken. That was stupid.
Yeah, you just got to turn 2 or 3 Hypergenesis and just completely go nuts.
Yeah, so that was really cool. And you and I ended up becoming friends after that. And then I don't remember exactly when this happened, but it wasn't that long after that we went on the Magic cruise together as well.
Yeah, that was the following year, but not like a whole year. A couple months later, I think is what it ended up being.
Yeah, and these were a thing that Steve Port from Legion Events, Legion Supplies, he was running these things where basically there would be a cruise. In this case, it was Seattle up to Alaska, and it would be Magic events were on it. So there was like a whole bunch of Magic players would go, and they would have like an event every day. They would have prizes. They would have speakers. I mean, Richard Garfield spoke at that one.
Yep. So did Forsyth.
Yeah. And Forsyth did too. And so, we got to hang out with them. And so there would be Wizards people and whatever. But what do you remember most? Because you and I hung out for like that entire thing, basically. Like we were just eating and jamming, and it was fun.
Yeah, no, it was a great time. I remember I really liked Forsyth's presentation where he talked about how Time Spiral was too many in-jokes and like way too complicated. I thought that was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I remember the pool had those like very mediocre grilled cheese sandwiches next to it, but yes. I don't know. When you can just grab food all day, it's like kind of wild.
We went pretty buck wild. Yeah. Do you remember? Do you remember the cube incident?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember because TSG was there with his cube, and we negotiated paying I think it was $50 to take a random card out of the cube, and I get to keep it. But then you never got to keep the card. I don't remember what happened.
So I gave him $100 to have 2 pulls from his cube, but it was like a huge. It wasn't even 7. It was like 960 cards or something.
And there were some cards worth way more, but plenty of cards worth way less. That's why we ended up on 50.
Yeah, and I remember the first card pulled, we had my girlfriend reveal, but she didn't know. So she's like, it's a land. And we're like, oh, because I mean, he had all the duels, like all this sweet stuff. And it ended up being a foil Evolving Wilds. And then the next one was a foil Woodfall Primus, yep. Which he said he needed for the cube. And then I never got it. But.
Yeah. In retrospect, it was kind of dumb for all parties because like, him having to replace these random foils is really annoying, but then also like, what are we trying to like grift,
Yes. We were trying to get like a volcanic and be like, haha. But we had a bunch of people watching. It was fun, but we cubed, we played that cube infinite. Oh, yeah. Also, that was the trip where you Molder slugged me when we did the Mirrodin draft.
Yes. I introduced Marshall to Molder Slug, which is a 3 green for a 4/6. And at the beginning of each player's upkeep, they sack an artifact, and it was mirrored in the all artifact set.
Yeah, that was fun. Anyway, and that was where Luis and I really, I think, became really good friends. And he was somebody that I look forward to saying hi to out at the PT. I mean, I was doing coverage by this point. So, this would be like, I'd go out and see him at events all the time. But I mean, he was playing and with the testing team. So I would just stop by and say hi and, kind of catch up with him here and there online and stuff. But then, a few years after that, in 2014-ish?
Yep, 2014.
I found myself without a co-host on LR, and eventually it ended up being you. What do you remember about that?
Well, I remember I had talked to you about it because, or I knew it was happening. I knew Brian Wong had decided like, hey, I'm not really that in, like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like I want to step back from Magic. I don't want to do this. I don't remember every single reason, but it basically was that. I think he was just not having that much fun playing Magic. And I remember we were both doing coverage at GPLA. This was like the standard Grand Prix. Yeah. And I remember like, hey, can we chat? And you're like, yeah, sure. What's up? And I'm like, hey, I saw that you're looking for a co-host, for LR. I'm like, you're like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I'd be interested in doing that,
I remember we were up on the stage. I remember all of this very clearly because I was like, so obviously I thought you were trolling me because like our interactions at that point was basically you making monkey jokes at my, at my, what is it called? Whatever expense. Yeah. Forever. And then you're just like, yeah, I'm interested. And I'm just like, okay, what's the angle? Like, what do you, but then you were like really not laughing or whatever. And cause I said like, I remember saying like, yes, like if we can make that work, like 100%, that like, I didn't even want to ask you because I thought it would just be like another thing to throw on your plate, or it would, you'd just be like, yeah, I'm not going to do that or whatever. And when you put it on the table, I'm just like, yes, like let us.
I knew you weren't going to ask me.
I was not going to ask you. I mean, I don't know. It's like, this is like, I want you to earmuffs this, but this is like, hey, Michael Jordan, you want to come play in my pickup game with me? Right. It's like, it's like you hope he would, but like, you're not going to, it's like he gets asked stuff all the time. Like, we were friends, but it wasn't like we were like super close. And I don't know. I just didn't want to be that guy, I guess. But when you put it on the table, I was like, absolutely. But then we had like a little bit of a situation because you were so affiliated with Channel Fireball at the time, and the show at the time was sponsored by Card Kingdom. And I was like, well, what would happen with that? Because would you be allowed to come on a show that's sponsored by another, like basically a direct competitor, for CFB? And you said, well, what if we sponsored the show too? And I said, okay. And we talked to John and we worked out all the details and stuff. And that worked out great. And I was like, this is awesome. And then all of a sudden I had you as my co-host. Do you remember your first few shows?
Well, I remember the first show I did was the Fate Reforged set review.
Mm-hmm. You jumped right into the deep end of the pool.
And I remember afterwards thinking like, that was way too long. And we actually did get to the point where I think our set reviews are actually of a good length now, where they're long. I mean, there's no way around that. But we do a good job of not repeating what the other person said, because there was a thing at the beginning where, especially, we're both kind of getting to know each other's style and what we do, right? Where we both would want to say something about a card, but then if you said it, I would just kind of say it again, right? And we needed to just sort of feel that part out. But man, I remember feeling, because I had done this show with 3 co-hosts prior, and then also just a bunch of guest co-hosts like in between and stuff. So I have a really good sense, I think, for how it's going to go pretty quickly. And I was like, our chemistry was always good, so I knew that part would be fine. How would it be over Skype? Fine. It was great. In fact, I was just like, this is amazing. And then, I was like throwing you some pitches and kind of seeing what you would do with them, because, one of the things that the role that you're in here on the show really requires, and that all of the co-hosts have had, is a sort of a natural teacher vibe, if that makes sense, right? You have to be somebody who's finds value in teaching other people stuff, right? And look, it's my job to get that out of you and to guide that ship for you. But if you don't care about that, I can't make that happen. And it was clear to me from the very beginning that was a gear that you had. And I was like, this is going to be sick. Like I knew after like 2 episodes that like we were going to really be able to put something together that was going to be special. And, we haven't looked back since. I remember there were a decent amount of negative reactions when I joined.
I remember they said you made fun of me too much.
Yeah. And there was like the way I see it is Brian had a very devoted following, which is awesome. He's very good at it. Like, I think he's a fantastic podcaster. And so I remember there being skepticism. Oh, is this guy going to be as good as Brian? It's not even clear that he's better than Brian in any way. Like, and I wasn't too worried about it. I found it kind of funny because it's just like, people just don't like change is a big thing.
That is a big part of it. Also, our dynamic, we had developed that through like forming a friendship and hanging out, but people on the show didn't know about that. Right.
Yeah. There's tons of people on the show who had no or little idea who I was. And
well, that's not true, but.
Well, I think that the audiences were not quite overlappy. And then there's also,
they knew who you were.
The element of like, oh, just because this guy's a pro, is he going to be good at this?
That is totally it. Because, there is an element to the show that we had before of, we're in the trenches. Like we were, playing on Magic Online at the time, like nonstop and, really kind of getting into the depths of it. And, I was concerned that the vibe when you first came on might be that you were coming down from on high, to like bless us with your, knowledge or whatever. And that wouldn't work for the audience. I knew that they wouldn't like that. But again, that's on me. Like I need to get what me and the audience need out of you at that time. And so, that I felt confident that I could do. I could steer that ship in the direction that we wanted. I mean, and that was the other thing is that like your ability to, like, if I ask the question, you are going to give me the answer. And, I never ask you a question. You go, yeah, I don't know. I got nothing. Like, just never thought about that. Like that. You've never said that to me in any booth, in any podcast, in anything ever. And I just remember being really excited because I just felt like this was going to level up the show. I just, you know what I mean? Like having somebody of your accomplishment, skill level, credibility, all that stuff. And yeah, I mean, that's exactly what happened in my mind, at least. So, kind of fast forwarding here a little bit through your career, now you're doing LR, you were always taking on new stuff, but you kind of had a stretch where like you weren't winning every PT, top 8ing everything. And then boom, you crushed it in 2016. You had 3 top 8s in a row and it was like, forgot about Dre.
Yeah. I really enjoyed that year for the obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Well, part of it was like, I was coming off a drought and like, Magic, just like everything else in the world, is very much what have you done for me lately?
Yes.
Like, you spend a year not winning and people are like, was this guy even all that good to begin with?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Fluke. Like, oh, maybe this guy just ran good for a while. And like, at this point, I'm not really worried about it. Obviously, like I've been through the ringer and back or whatever, but like it was something that was getting to me. And Paulo has gone through kind of similar things where, he had his stretches of not winning. And of course, he's blown everyone out of the water still. So people were like, oh, right, of course. But getting that first top 8 at, PT Oath of the Gatewatch with that broken Eldrazi deck, I was like, wow, I'm back. This is great. Like, okay, I got this. Now I've, I might have had a bit of a dry spell, but I'm really like solidified that like I can still compete. And then I top 8 it again and then was like, wow, this is just great. And then the third one, I was like, wow, really again? Is this going to happen? Because like, I mean, obviously it's like survivorship bias and I'm looking back on it, but playing that Bant Company deck, I remember even midway through the tournament feeling like everything's just kind of rolling exactly as it should be. Like the deck's good. I'm playing well. Like I'm always having the negate when I need it. My opponent's never having the languish when they need it. Like you just kind of get that sense of everything's on rails and you're just kind of cruising. And just spiking those 3 top 8s was like, oh, it was pretty cool. Like I didn't do that well in those top 8s. Now I have 1 win over 10 top 8s, which is the ratio has only gotten worse because I won my first one. Mm-hmm. I went first, second. I think I finished every place in the top 8 at this point. But,
you hit the cycle.
So I'm no Shahar Shenhar, wins 2 worlds in a row just and drops the mic or whatever. But obviously I'm not unhappy with how it all has gone. And at this point, like I'm really comfortable with where I'm at with Magic. Like I played well the last couple tournaments. I wasn't like I finished, 5th in the Rivals League out of, 40 odd people or whatever. And like I had that top 8 with the like Jund Company deck a year or so ago. And I'm not playing at my peak. I think my peak is in my rearview mirror at this point. If I had to guess, not that that's like a huge surprise, but I also feel like I play well. Like I don't feel bad about these tournaments. One of the things I kind of never wanted to be and have tried to avoid is I don't want to be that like washed Hall of Famer, not to name any names, who shows up at the tournament and doesn't know how the cards work, or is reading the card during the draft or whatever. That I think is kind of disrespectful. Like it's you can do it, whatever, but like I would choose not to go to those pro tours instead of doing that at a pro tour. I don't like the way that plays out because it's like they give us lifetime invites. Well, they did. They took those away, funnily enough, but they did give us lifetime invites. Weird how you could take away a lifetime invite, isn't it? And part of it was like, yeah, come if you're going to play Magic, not come for an appearance fee and don't know what's going on. Don't embarrass yourself. I never wanted to be that, and I don't feel like I have. Like, even though, like, yeah, I mean, at some of these tournaments, I prepare more. Like, if you look at the like 4 or 5 big tournaments in the last year and a half, there's a couple where I actually prepared quite a bit, and I was like, all right, yeah, I want to do well, and I've got, the time to do this. And there's some I didn't prepare that much, but played enough to know what I was doing, and I feel pretty comfortable with where I'm at. Sometimes I'll be closer to my A game, sometimes I'll be closer to my B game, but it's always, at least for now, going to be in those ranges. I don't think I would feel great about showing up to a tournament playing like my C game, which I have for like some Grand Prix.
Yeah,
I really haven't for a Pro Tour. It's just not. I don't have that in me. Like, I just, I don't know. I would hate it.
Yeah, that 2016 was also, I think, important for your legacy. Like, that took you from what? Like, that was like your 5th, 6th, and 7th, or 6th, 7th, and 8th top 8s or whatever. And that, takes you from like a solid Hall of Fame career to like one of the GOATs, right? Like, that puts you up into that upper strat. And you didn't stop there. Like you said, you had another one after, and these are the type of long-term finishes, that people go, okay, this guy, didn't just have a good run in the late and early 2010s or whatever. Like, this is, one of our. I
mean, I had a run in 2017 or 2018 where I top 8'd 2 in a row.
Right. So, that type of stuff, just to me is what's put you into that top 5 discussion routinely now, where before that you weren't. Right. I mean, people thought like he's probably the best player today. You got that a lot back then, like could be the best player going. But, when you had people with 8 top 8s or 9 top 8s at the time, and you had 4, it's like, well, we're just not putting you in there until you get those. And in 2016, you rattle off 3 and you've been, 1 a year since or whatever. And, that puts you into that. Bringing us up to a little bit more of the modern times now, to kind of wrap up the Magic thing. I want you to talk about, the MPL, how that whole thing went for you, because I mean, you missed the boat on it, right? By only a little bit, but like if you got into the MPL, you did okay, you were in it for what, 3 years straight?
Yeah. My feelings about the MPL aren't particularly complicated or mixed. I thought it sucked when they announced it. I thought it sucked when it was happening. And now I think it sucks when it's over because, and look, I feel like I'm a fairly self-aware person, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if you think that or not, but I feel like I do ridiculous things all the time. I complain about stupid stuff. I can be arrogant. I can have a lot of these things, but I also am aware I'm doing it at the, and some part of this is definitely sour grapes that I wasn't in it, but I'd like to think that I'm perceptive enough to understand even if I was in it, I would still think a lot of these things about it.
And I've heard you say that a lot for things that benefited you directly, and you still said they were bad.
And the reason, basically, the MPL had a couple of things that I think were, I mean, I do blame the MPL, or I guess, whatever machinations led to the MPL, for why organized play kind of fell apart. Mm-hmm. Because it's hard to cancel the Pro Tour, right? It's doable, but it's obviously hard. I mean, we know how, you worked in big companies before. Like, You have something with a 25-year history that is accomplishing, presumably its stated goals. It's pretty hard to be like the person who says, no, we're just going to cancel this.
Yes.
But when you pitch, hey, we're going to do the Magic Pro League. We're going to be esports. We're going to do all this stuff. And then that goes really poorly, which is what happened. It's easy to cancel that.
Yes.
And that's how that I feel is how the Pro Tour got canceled. And
interesting.
So the MPL was, 32 players, and yeah, I would have been in it for most of the years that I was playing actively. It happened to land in a year where I just didn't go to very many Grand Prix and we didn't know this was coming, but that's fine. That's not unfair. I want to be clear that I don't think I got screwed out of being in the MPL. It just, it just didn't line up for the times when I would have made it. And I got second at a PT that was the last PT before it, which actually didn't count for it because it was already determined at that point, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But what it did, and this I can definitely speak to, if you weren't in the MPL, organized play stopped in 2018. Mm-hmm. Like, it just, you no longer were part of organized play. Like, you could play the last couple Mythic Championships, but like MPL had all these other tournaments. They were only competing with people in the MPL. They put all their time, focus, money, energy into the MPL members, which that part I think was good in the sense that, like, if you're going to do it, do the thing. I can't say that they didn't try to do the thing well. But I don't think it did not betray it betrayed a misunderstanding of kind of who cared about competitive Magic and what was going on with it, where it's like all these people who used to play at PTQs or follow or go to Grand Prix and follow this stuff no longer we're now told, like, hey, you're not part of the system at all. The MPL had no turnover for 3 years.
Yeah. It was a big problem. I mean, even you ended up working your way back in, the hard way, but that took all those years to do it.
Well, I never even got into the MPL. I got into the Rivals League, which is when they expanded.
Right. Yeah.
But like anyone who wasn't in that was just out. Like Raptor is a great example. Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
One of the top 15 Magic players of all time. Right. He just didn't play another tournament effectively after 2019 or something.
I haven't seen Pat Cox in 4 years.
Yeah, he just stopped playing Magic.
Right. And, I think the best example is Sam Black.
Oh, because, Sam Black's a great example.
Right. Because Sam, lives, breathes, he is Magic to the core, right? Like he's got his own style with all of his stuff, but that guy is he is a Magic player, right? And he was very good at the game. He was able to put himself into the highest echelon routinely, consistently, right? He's I think people know now, but he was a criminally underrated limited player. Everybody thought he was like this brewer, but he was really like a limited guy. And he didn't make the cut to make it in the MPL. I think he was close. Like he was up on that list. He just didn't quite get there. And he hasn't interacted with, I mean, I saw him asking on Twitter, hey, I think I qualified for a thing. What does it even mean? What do I do now? Right. I mean, this is a guy who he's willing to dedicate all of his professional and a lot of his free time to Magic. And he just was out. So that really speaks volumes to me.
I mean, what it did was if you weren't in the top 32, which was a lot of players, like, there's 70 odd pro players and another couple hundred people who would play a lot of the pro tours. Mm-hmm. They were all of a sudden, they were kind of frozen out, which then obviously, like, of those people, they each represent many dozens more each of people who would play at PTQs.
Yes.
And it percolated down where, like, now organized, like, I mean, we'll see, like the kind of happy ending to this could be, or at least a way forward could be that Huey, who's, recently announced actually in your house right
He's
now,
in the living room. Yeah.
as the director of play programs, which isn't just the Pro Tour, obviously, or organized play. It's everything, as far as I understand. He's someone I trust to kind of shepherd whatever the next era of Magic is. But organized play just became like kind of a punchline. Like it just wasn't a thing. And then the MPL didn't succeed for a lot of reasons, and that was just a really frustrating time for me because it was like the combination of like, yeah, I'm left out of this thing, but also, man, I hate this direction. I don't think this direction is going to work.
Right. And it didn't end up working. I mean, they tried. I mean, like I think the Rivals League was a perfect example of something that was a worthy adjustment, right? It made it so that it wasn't so insanely exclusive. Like that's where Sam would have ended up. Right. Yeah. And he would have been in Rivals and he could have been competing and trying to get his way up to MPL and he would have had a path in front of him if that's how it had started with an additional league that was like trying to get into MPL, but it's not how it went. And now, it's been years that have gone by. What about now? One of the two kind of things I want to end on for you are, one, where do you see yourself with Magic? Right? Like what's next? I guess that's a pretty big question mark for everybody who plays professionally. But then the other thing is that, you mentioned that, well, I've never, when I get jobs, like it's because of my reputation within Magic, right? And you've had multiple jobs now in the game design, game development space that, weren't in Magic that have, kind of become, one of the foundations of your career or whatever as well, kind of branching away. And I kind of want to know, what's in store for you going forward.
Well, yeah. So
besides continuing to be the co-host on Limited Resources indefinitely.
Funny that you ask, but no, but in 2012, I mean, I ended up moving out here to Denver to work at Direwolf Digital, where I worked for the next near decade. Mm-hmm. I left last year, or I guess, sorry, we're recording this on the second to last day of the year. So I left earlier this year.
Yes.
To work on Storybook Brawl with, some friends of mine, Raptor, Matt Nass, Matt Place. And I really enjoyed game design as like a part of my career because that's a lot of it. I mean, obviously, like people knew I worked on Eternal and worked at Direwolf, and of course they knew I worked at Brawl. Like I would talk about these things, but I think a lot of it has kind of not been. I mean, a lot of it's just been work. It's been a thing that it's not like publicly displayed in the sense that you can see the end product, but you don't see how much time and energy I'm putting into the actual work itself. And it's something I've really enjoyed doing. It's something I needed, not because I needed to get another job as much, just because I wanted to learn something new. Mm-hmm. I wanted to challenge myself. And that's a big thing about all of this is like, I frequently am just looking for like the next challenge. I'm not someone who's generally happy with like standing still. I'm always fidgeting. I'm always doing something. I'm always finding a project. And that doesn't mean every project works out. I've had plenty that haven't, and there's things I've gone down the road of and then decided, oh no, this isn't what I want to be doing or whatever. But one of the things I've loved about game design is it's really challenging. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. It's something that can really, really presses you and you don't even necessarily always find the answer. Like, you get to make decisions and then you don't really know whether you're right or not, but you kind of hope you make enough right that things work out. Yeah. Because it's hard, but it's hard to like, it's not like in Magic when you're like, should I bolt this creature or this creature? You bolt one and then on the next turn you're like, oh wow, that was not the right one to bolt.
Right.
You
don't get that feedback necessarily.
No, you don't. But I'm really excited. I have a hard time seeing life in the near to medium term that doesn't involve quite a bit of Magic, just one way or another. I've been the Vintage Cube is out right now. Like we were talking before the show, I'd just been doing a couple cubes, even when I only managed to stream once because my family's been in town up until 2 days ago. But I love playing Magic. I watch a lot of streams these days, and really been enjoying that. And I do this podcast. I do Constructed Resources. I enjoy. I mean, getting to hang with you and BK is just a lot of fun. I'm glad we're not doing this one live, so he can't hear that. But and then of course my work with Channel Fireball. Like, I don't know. It's hard for me to envision a world where I just like step away from Channel Fireball, right? Like
you've been there for a really long time now.
12 years. It's been a huge part of my life, and what happens next with the competitive scene in Magic will impact me one way or another, but it doesn't necessarily, it's not like a make or break thing where it's like, if they don't have some good tournaments, I'm out of here. But it does also kind of, it will impact like how I spend my time. And I anticipate we've got some exciting announcements coming up with Storybook Brawl. And, as those come out, we'll see more, but I do anticipate spending a good chunk of my time really working on that because I really believe in it too, and it's a really fun challenge to tackle.
Oh, that's great, man. You've had quite a journey, with Magic and even outside of it. And I think anybody that knows you knows you're gonna keep it up and you'll continue to do it. I see a lot of correlations in your personality. I mean, I have the same things that you just described, but talking about like being competitive or wanting to, it's similar. You put in a bunch of work on a deck, you practice, you draft a bunch, whatever, and then you want to put it out into the world and see how you did, right? Like that's kind of the 1-2 punch that makes up a lot of your personality. And, you want to do that at the Pro Tour level. And then, when it comes to, Channel Fireball, well, you want to get behind the scenes at CFB, come up with ideas on how to make the business better, how to make things better for the customers, right? How to push things forward for the company. And then you want to put them out into the world and see how they do. And game design's the same way. You work for Direwolf, you work for Storybook Brawl, and you get behind the scenes. You have your ideas. You have your reasons for them. You execute them on the best way you can. And then what do? You throw it out into the world and you see how you did, right? And, that to me is the thing that I look to you to keep doing. I know you like that is what you were just talking about encapsulates it for me about how you're saying, well, I don't want to stand still, right? You're saying, I want to keep trying new stuff, throwing it out and seeing how I do. And, I think that, you're one of the smartest people I know and, capable people and all that stuff. So I think you'll keep having success as you go forward. Thanks for talking to us about this. We were thinking about what to do for the show this week, and I was just like, man, I've wanted to do a show like this for a long time. I think the audience actually really enjoys these types of things. I always feel a lot of pressure to make sure that we deliver on kind of our core promise to the audience, which is to help them improve at limited. And this type of discussion is more for fun and entertainment and stuff, but hopefully, they got something out of it as well. And, we do try to touch on life advice on the show as well. We try to relate magic related, strategic related stuff and how sometimes it pops up in real life. And, hopefully you can get an idea. I mean, look at Luis's path, right? This is not get good grades in high school, go to college, get a good job, be happy, right? Like he bounced all over the place. He almost was off the pro tour. Then all of a sudden was back in starting businesses, seeing how those go. I mean, there's a lot of risk that Luis has taken. There's a lot of time up front that he's put in on his various ventures, and some of them work, some of them don't. And, I think there's a lot to learn from life there. Anyway, thanks, Luis, for telling us all those fun stories.
Yeah, it's always fun to kind of go through, and who doesn't like talking about themselves? And
yeah, I didn't have to sell you too hard on this one, did I?
Yeah, no, it's fun to try to figure out kind of how you got there, and yeah, I don't know. It's
also good to reflect. I mean, that was part of the reason why I wanted to do this, was because it's the end of the year, and yeah, it's just some arbitrary date or whatever, but this is any time is a good time to kind of gain a little bit of perspective, look back at your life, kind of see, where am I going? What am I doing? What have I done that's worked? What am I proud of? What I would have done different, and kind of make sure that you're kind of on the path that you want to be. And if you're not, do the things that you need to do to get to that point. Let's call it a show there. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can find everything related to the podcast on lrcast.com. Make sure you check out Channel Fireball. If you've got some holiday money burning a hole in your pocket, you know where to go. Channelfireball.com. Use the affiliate code LR at checkout. It helps us out and we appreciate it. Also, Luis, FTX, we're doing a charity tournament, a cube tournament with them in about a week's time here.
Yeah, so we had to reschedule because we were initially going to do it a few days ago, but scheduling over the holidays is a nightmare. Just trying to get everything lined up. But it looks like we're going to do it on January 8th in the evening. I think 5:30 Pacific is the plan. It's going to be me, you, BK, and Numatanami. Kenji's going to be joining us as well, since he's on team FTX TSM. Mm-hmm. And as well as 4 folks from FTX, potentially even their owner. We'll see if the great SBF has time. And we're going to be doing a cube draft where if you 3-0 the draft and win, your charity gets $10,000. If you go 2-1, your charity gets $5,000, and otherwise your charity gets $2,500. So obviously, quite a nice amount of money just going to charity. It's one of the cool things about them is it's something their organization does care about. And I look forward to doing that. I think we're going to have, if we get them figured out in time, some additional charity prizes if you pull off various achievements. So, and I think that's going to be sweet. And I believe they've even picked up an Ancestral Recall, which they're going to raffle up among people who donate to charity and just send them a screenshot that they donated to, I think, any charity, actually.
Okay. Yeah, that's really cool. And we're going to be, I'm going to stream it. Luis is going to stream it, right? You're streaming it?
Yep, that's the plan.
Yeah. And so that should be really fun and a good cause. Luis is going to be playing for Planned Parenthood. I'm playing for Seattle Children's Hospital. And you'll be able to watch along with the others as they play as well. And we're going to mop the floor with them, right, Luis? I mean, come on, it's Vintage Cube. It's where we live. Oh,
did you see the hot streak I was on yesterday in my stream?
What did you do?
Well, the first 2 drafts, I started out 3-0, 6-0 in both. And then I lost in the finals of the 3rd draft. But yeah, I had a pretty good little run.
Okay, well, I'll try to meet you in the finals then. I got a couple of trophies, but I've been drafting a fair bit, so I feel like I should have a couple more than I do. At any rate, thanks to FTX for doing that. We'll look forward to it. If you do want to check out any of the stuff on FTX, is ftx.us for United States customers, ftx.com for outside, and make sure you consult an investment professional before doing investing of any kind. Yeah, that's going to do it for this episode. Happy holidays, everybody. I hope you're having a good, relaxing time as we transition into 2022. We'll see you on the other side.
All right, so I want to review the Christmas gifts I got.
You're going to review them? What are you going to give them? Star grades? Or?
Well, just to see what the haul was, right? I mean, just like when you're a kid. Of course, look, I'll preface it by saying the best Christmas gift I got was that Santi showed up and we had Christmas with all the kids and my brothers and my dad and Abuelita and everyone. That was great. Mm-hmm. But let's actually talk about the gifts I got, because That's the important part.
Yeah, what'd you get?
So I got a bottle of nice beard oil with like a wooden beard comb.
Okay,
that was good.
Yeah.
Definitely great. I was very happy with that. I got a subscription, a coffee subscription, where every month we get four big bottles of iced coffee.
Oh my God, that's like your dream.
That's in the running for the best for sure.
Wait, did you say we? Is that for you and Gabby?
Well, she got it.
Because you're going to like get the lion's share.
85% of it or something. Yeah. My brother got me a giant Oakland blanket, like a comfy blanket that has like scenes from Oakland on it, which I think is great.
Cool.
I
definitely
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else did I get? I got some other stuff too. Most of the gifts were for the kids, obviously.
Yeah. I think maybe we should focus on that. Yeah.
But
what did the mild Nakatl get? What was her? Did she get something?
She had such a good haul. She got like a train set that you could build, like with those little wood tracks, you know?
Yeah. Those are sweet.
Like a pretty simple one. It has hearts on it. She actually did want a train with hearts on it. She got a set of all the Disney princesses. She's very much in the princess phase here. She got a Lego set that my dad made with her, which was really cool.
They put it together?
Yeah, he got it for her, and then they built it together when he was here.
That's cool. Man,
I mean, Lego is obviously just such a big part of our childhoods. It's really cool seeing that. Got a couple other things too. Got like a drawing book. Got some like princess tiaras to wear, but they don't work all that well. Oh, got some sea monkeys, which is kind of like an anti-gift for me because I have to make sure that like the sea monkeys like, flourish as best I can because definitely on me if they don't.
Yeah, for sure.
But no, it was good overall. Everyone had a good time, and it was I don't know. Christmas is fun. It's funny because when you're a kid, I can't speak for everyone. When I was a kid, Christmas was like my favorite holiday. Like obviously, like my parents would like get us stockings and we'd get gifts and just got to see family and all that stuff was really cool. And then you become an adult and it's like, okay, like I liked it still, but didn't quite hit the same. But now that I have kids, it's gone back up to like very high in the power rankings because like getting them presents and seeing what how fun that is for them is just like a huge thing,
Yeah. I got a bunch of presents for the cat and for the dog that I dog sit for all the time. That was the most fun.
I got you some barbecue.
Oh my God. It was so good, dude. My mom was so stoked and my stepdad, because I went up to my parents on Christmas Eve. I was going to go to my aunt's on Christmas Day, but it ended up snowing, so I didn't go. But anyway, and my mom was like, well, she's doing dinner the next day for the family. So she was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do on Christmas Eve. Like, I want to make you something, but she's pretty cooked out and, whatever. And I said, Mom, don't worry. Cause the barbecue you got me came early. And so I was able to bring it up and we made it. It was so good. It's crazy how good barbecue travels. Like I don't think it tasted worse. Like, I think you could put them both in front of me. I'm just like, some food is like you really want it right out of the oven or the cooking thing or whatever. Dude, this tasted fantastic. Like, it held up perfect.
Yeah, I had ordered from just Oklahoma Joe's before because it's one of my favorite, like actually my favorite barbecue place. And it's definitely the sort of thing that travels well. It's been really cool seeing that's like a thing you can do for like a special occasion or what have you.
It was so cool, man. Thanks for that.
I mean, speaking of which, for my brother Antonio, I got him a 3-month pizza subscription where he gets a random pizza every month.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
From around the country. So
that's so cool.